Okay, so we are recording and welcome everybody. Today we are doing a high school 101 webinar for high school students specifically. And we're going to start out at the beginning with just some high school specific information. This is primarily going to be geared towards entering freshmen who kind of may not have a full understanding of it. But those of you, I know there are some of you, because I can see by your names, who are in here who are further along in your high school careers than that. And that's perfectly fine too. So some of that stuff you might already understand, but the rest of it I think is going to be very valuable information. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get my windows up and we will get rolling. See if I can put it into presenter mode right away this time. If you guys have questions while I am rambling on or sharing valuable information, feel free to put those into the chat. I'm going to try and keep tabs on that and drag that window over. I can see everybody here on the side, and as soon as I add my participants panel, we will be good to go. Okay, awesome. So now it's got me clicking through here. There we go. All right. So I'm going to jump in because those of you who know me know that I like to talk about this stuff and I can talk a lot. We're going to try and keep it to our 30 minutes. If you want more information or help and guidance through some of these pieces as you create them, we are available. We have other workshops and groups coming up, which we'll talk about later. So a few bullet points I'm starting every webinar with. This executive functioning stuff is the stuff that has always mattered. This is not new to COVID or e-learning. However, it's even more applicable because the challenges of navigating hybrid schedules and remote learning can be even more difficult when we're talking about all of the different screens and steps and instructions and expectations. It can be very confusing. So having a handle on the pieces that we're going to talk about today it's going to be so critical for you to be successful. This stuff is very pragmatic, which means realistic, practical, easy to implement. It doesn't have to be pretty. We just want it to be functional and customized in ways that work for you. Okay, this is also about figuring out how to figure it out. It's going to be a year of challenge given the circumstances. So we want you to figure out how to figure it out for yourself. I don't want parents to have to micromanage. I don't want for you to, kind of flounder and get frustrated and give up, which I see all the time. We all do it sometimes, right? But we want to right away recognize when there's something to figure out and start to do that problem solving to figure out how to do it or how to overcome it. So independence, ownership, accountability. You are either going into or in high school now. We want your parents to be pulling out of it. We want you to be independently managing, and we're going to give you all of those tools and talk about creating those today. And so I want you to own it, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. The accountability piece, I'm going to touch on that at that bottom bullet point, the second to last one of parents. You need to find ways to keep yourself accountable. Lots of times that's going to involve parents. So we do also want to focus on learning how to learn and how to study. Most all students, even our college students, still need help figuring out the best ways to effectively study and take action to understand and apply the material. It's challenging, so we will not be talking about it at length. I'll kind of touch on that today, but in our future workshops, we will be going into more detail on really practical down and dirty study techniques. But actually in this case, also with the e-learning and the virtual environments, learning how to learn. My note on teachers is right piggybacked with this. A lot of teachers doing a fantastic job. And I've said this in other webinars and workshops, a lot of teachers actually kind of struggle with the virtual or they might not communicate in ways that work for you. So you're going to feel as though, it's not clicking. We have to figure out what to do about it. And how are you going to learn when the information isn't presented in a way or the content is difficult for you or it's not presented in a way that works for you. So figuring out how to learn, how to use resources, how to get the help is going to be critical to high school success. Like I said, teachers, use them. Parents, use them. We do want you, if you're watching this as a parent, to kind of pull back. Don't be checking the grades every day. I have other workshops on this. Really want you to help your student to create the plans to become independent. So if they want your help, you can guide them through some of these pieces. Otherwise, we can do it. We do need you to step in, and we need you as a student, if you're watching this, to use your parents for that accountability that you need. So whether it's at the end of the week, you kind of report how you did on all these pieces, how you followed through, what went well, how were the grades, and you kind of talk together. And you maybe have some consequences or rewards that are contingent upon that. We do sometimes need that extra accountability to help us to get motivated and to make it that much more real. We have worked with, I personally, over almost 20 years, all different levels of kids through college, different types of schools, public, private, good teachers, not so good teachers. We've kind of seen it all. So everything we're sharing here today is going to be with that in mind. Lots of experience. And it's hard to not be able to talk at length about all these things, but we have 30 minutes. So surviving e-learning, this is a blog post that I had put out. It's on my website in the blogs. You can download. It's an infographic that I screenshotted in pieces here. This is kind of the foundation that we're following for today. But before I jump into these top 5 kind of areas of how to be successful with most of you are on, I'm assuming, e-learning at this point, at least for the foreseeable future. I'm going to talk about some of those core, just kind of specific to high school pieces. So really quickly, I do like to show this model of executive functioning or effectiveness. This is what it takes in life. We are not just talking about school. We're talking about skills that are going to actually last you on throughout your life. So college, career, beyond. So thinking, activating or getting ready, doing and taking action, and then making those adjustments that you need. I know it's really challenging sometimes to admit when you're struggling or to admit when something didn't work, but the most important thing to start to do is to work on that self-awareness and understand if something isn't turning out how you like it, or you're not sure how to do something, or you don't get the expectation, or you don't understand the material, how are you going to quickly make an adjustment before you dig yourself too deep into a hole? Okay. Really quickly for our entering freshmen, always in our full high school 101 workshop, we talk about a lot of logistics about grades and how they're calculated and the different ways you could be graded, because many kids kind of enter into high school not fully understanding that you could be graded on total points in a class, or you could be graded on weighted categories. So we don't have time today to get into all that, but we do like to talk with freshmen about some real just specific pieces that a lot of freshmen don't fully understand. Quarters and semesters is something I think a lot of the junior highs are on trimesters now. Most of the high schools are on quarters or semesters. So if you look down at the bottom of the screen, it kind of just shows you it's the year is split in half, typically speaking. I know different schools vary. And then that half a year is split then into quarters. And that's your main grade is made up of a first semester grade and a second semester grade. You're going to get 2 grades that actually show up on your transcript that in the future colleges or wherever you might need to submit that would see. And those semester grades, teachers have a formula for calculating those. Typically, they'll put together 100% of your grade based on the first quarter, the second quarter, and your exam. This is standard. Some will do just semesters where it's 80% of the semester coursework and tests, and then 20% is that final exam. So you will take final exams twice a year. That'll be in December or January, midway. That'll be that 20% for that first grade that goes on your report card. And then at the end of the year as well. So you have 2 rounds of finals. A popular question is, do I have to know the material for the entire year for second semester in those May and June final exams? Generally speaking, the answer is no. Typically, I've rarely, I don't know if I've ever actually seen it in high school other than for AP exams, which is a whole other story, but you do not need to know the entire year's material. So you can kind of get tested in December, January, and then put those materials away and start fresh for the new semester. So that makes it a little less stressful, hopefully. The calculations vary, so just check each individual, and I'll talk to you about a chart that you can create. It's coming up kind of goofy, where you can really keep track of which classes are 20% final exam, which classes are 10% of the final, but 90% of the classwork. It's going to kind of be important for you to know where your grade is coming from. We have a formula, I'm not going to go into detail on this, that they use to actually calculate those grades, but what we do now is we just do it in a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet. You can see up here that there's a formula you can type in, and then you can kind of figure out if your semester grade is such and such, here's what you would need to get on your final exam to get the grade you want for the semester. And then we talk to kids a lot about the grading scale. Most of you understand at this point how grades work and are most still on a school that's using percent-based grades. I know we have some standards-based grading going on, but I think the majority of high schools really are still following a traditional grading scale at the moment. Honors and AP classes sometimes follow a different scale. Let's see if I can scoot my window here. Yes, so you can see there's 2 columns. The most common one that it says in the middle, that's that 90 and above is an A, 80% and up to an 89% is a B, 70 to a 79% is a C. So a lot of kids are surprised by this when they weren't on a standard scale or if they didn't pay too much attention to the grades in the grade school or junior high. It surprises them sometimes to think, oh wow, I could get a 70% and it's a C. I didn't know that. I thought that a C would be a 50%. So really make sure that you're clear on what your scale is. And then on the right hand side, if you're at a private school or in certain honors classes, they change their scale. So it's a little bit harder. So the minimum A, instead of being a 90, is going to be a 93. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware for each class and for your school. So look in the school handbook and understand what your grading scale is and where those grades are coming from. So now I do like to touch on this. I know some of you are in high school, some of you are just kind of getting started this year as a freshman. And so just very, very, very big picture. If you're thinking of going to college or wherever you're kind of moving on to, and anywhere, there's a lot of options now available. But if you're looking at college, the colleges look at, and this is going to be fall of your senior year, so it's a ways away, but they're going to look at your grade point average, which we'll talk about in a minute. Some will still look at something called a class rank, kind of where you stand relative to the other kids in your class, like, oh, there's 300 kids and I'm, 25 out of 300. Cool. Most have done away with that. Your ACT or SAT scores, so those big standardized tests that many of you have heard of, which is just kind of an exam that shows how ready you are for college. We're not going to talk in detail about that because that's also changing. And then your activities and your leadership roles, that's going to be critical, especially now with COVID. They've kind of pulled away from using, at least for the next year or two, the ACT and SAT scores as much. They are still meaningful. So if you're in high school and you have questions about that, I actually have a YouTube video up, and I think like 11 minutes maybe, that talks to you about the difference between ACT and SAT, and then a little bit about why you would want to still take those, even if the colleges say to you, hey, we don't need them. So I'm kind of trying to speak to those of you who I know are not freshmen and you're already in an advanced year of high school. So ACT, SAT, check out that video if you want. Activities and leadership roles, that's going to make it that much more important. So you guys who are starting out high school, get involved in some way, not just surface level. Really kind of start to work your way into a couple of different areas that you're passionate about. Take on leadership roles, initiate projects, do things that are going to, and not just to make them look good, obviously, but because they're good to do. But to a college, they're going to be more interested in what you're doing and how you're stepping up and showing up than they are in that ACT score at times, especially in this next year or two. So that's kind of why this GPA does matter, because your grade point average will be looked at when you're looking to get into colleges. And so for those of you who don't fully understand, or you're entering into high school and you haven't really had necessarily a GPA before, what that basically means, it's your grade point average. And so this is determined based on your letter grade that you get. So you can look at your calculations, your percentage scale that we saw, and you get, in most schools on the right-hand side, they follow a 4-point scale. So an A is a 4 point, a B is a 3 points, a C is 2 points, D is 1 point. You don't get anything for an F. So if you come out with like a 3.67 average, that's pretty great. It's a high B pushing towards like that solid A. Between that A and B range, it's a great GPA. If you were looking at your GPA and you're like, oh, I'm in the twos, I didn't really want to be there. I can see that, something in the twos is between a C and a D. I don't really want that. That's the kind of stuff that the colleges are going to see. So they take that average at the end of each semester and they kind of just build it up throughout your high school career. So that GPA cumulative means in total or overall from like the entire time you've been in school. So the colleges will get that GPA on your application. So you'll get 6 semesters, freshman, sophomore, and junior year. So 3 years, 6 semesters into your GPA before you start filling out college applications in the fall of your senior year, just so you have a big picture of where that's going. I do really like to share all of this experience with you guys in this many years of doing it as to why students really struggle. So these are the top reasons that students struggle. They don't have good processes and routines and habits. They don't have a good planning system. Coexisting factors. So a lot of you struggle, or a lot of us, I should say, struggle with attention or focus or learning, or maybe we have dyslexia, some social emotional difficulty, self-regulating, anxiety, depression. There's a lot that goes into and makes up who you are. And it's important to just recognize that all of that factors into how you show up and how well you actually are managing. So make sure, if any of that is the case for you, that you're aware of it and that you're taking some ownership and you're addressing that and finding the strategies and the supports that you need, because that will interfere with your ability to do well. And we want you to be able to feel confident and be successful. Trouble motivating procrastination. Okay, so this is something that adults struggle with as well. I'm not going to lie about that. Feeling overwhelmed, again, even as an adult, as a college student, it's not uncommon. What we want to do is just figure out how to manage when these things occur. Lack of awareness regarding assignments. This is huge. It's so funny because I got it. I know, Mom, I know. We hear this at home all the time too. Try to be aware that it's really tricky, especially right now with everything being online and digital, to find things. So try to be very aware of where the assignments are, what are all the different platforms, which we're going to talk about. How do you find things? How do you turn them in? A lot of times people are confused or embarrassed to ask. We're going to talk about really just being comfortable reaching out to your teachers and your peers to check in on those items so that you don't let anything slip through the cracks. Poor quiz or test performance. It can just be hard to adjust in certain classes or in high school, and to learn how to actually study in appropriate ways, which, like I said, we're going to go into more detail on the study skills in our longer workshops, but really all the different ways you can actually study. So lack of study skills is another reason why students sometimes struggle or don't get the grades that they would like. I'm sure you're laughing at this next bullet point. Distractions, the phone is a big one, social is a big one, and stress. All of that can really distract you. These other things going on in your life, or that little device that's right there in front of you all the time pretty much, can distract you from doing what it is that you need to do. So find ways to manage all of those pieces right away. Attention to detail. A lot of kids just really are kind of like, oh yeah, I did it and I turned it in, I did it, but they're not really going in depth and being very specific and detail oriented around meeting the expectations for assignments or preparing and studying. Another piece that we talk about, giving them, meaning teachers, because they're the ones giving you the grade, and not that it's all about grades, but grades are a good indicator as to whether or not you're successfully managing, right? They can turn up a lot of these pieces that we just talked about and kind of be red flags for us when the grades start to dip. So that's why we talk about grades. It's not that that's the most important thing in the world, but to most of us, they are important. Actually, pretty much everyone who comes in expresses that they do care about their grades. So give them, the teachers who are responsible for your grades, what they want. I know that you don't want to be told what to do. I still don't like being told what to do as a grown-up, but sometimes you kind of have to just suck it up, give them what they want. Make sure you're following those directions. I hear all the time from students, it's just stupid. I don't see why we'd have to do that. I don't understand the homework. And I'm being sarcastic, as if you know me, you know I like to add a little humor into things here. But yeah, okay, fine. It's a silly assignment. You don't care about it. You don't see the point. Fine. At the end of the day, it's what they want, and you got to do it. So figure out how to follow those directions and give them what they want, and don't get hung up in whether or not it's a good use of your time. You have to do it either way. So pay close attention to your due dates. This is a big one. Sometimes teachers really will not be flexible. Even in the e-learning environment, I've seen some crazy stuff where teachers really are not willing to accept late work at all. So make sure that you are on top of where to find the assignments, when to turn them in, how to get them done, which we're going to keep talking about more. Strategies for that. Use and do not lose your assignment sheets. Do not dismiss these sheets, the syllabus at the beginning of the year, of course, but then these assignment sheets that they give you, and they're not sheets anymore, they're probably documents online. So sometimes they're even hard to find. Make sure that you keep a log or keep track for each class as to all the possible ways you can get work. A lot of kids, what they don't realize is the assignments could be posted for one teacher, just one class, one teacher, and you have probably 6 of those at least in 4 different places. So you've got to know, do I need to check Google Classroom, this other online website? My email is just getting emailed to me. Bunch of different places that you might have to log into a portal and take an online quiz. So there could be 4 or 5 platforms, or record a Flipgrid, like that you would have to get assignments from or turn assignments in on. This is where the executive functioning or the effectiveness piece comes in. It gets hard to manage. So we're going to talk about a chart you can create to keep track of every single class, because it gets overwhelming. And we don't want you to feel overwhelmed. We just want you to be able to look at your chart and say, oh, that's right, let me just go ahead and check these 3 places to make sure I didn't miss anything. So pay attention to not only the assignment instructions, but also what are those details. I really like for you guys to print them out. I know it seems a little wasteful with the paper. I know it's hard to print on the Chromebooks. Email it to your parents, whatever you need to do. And then that way you can circle all of the tasks. You can make check boxes on the assignment sheet so that you don't miss any of the steps, and you give the teacher what they want. You meet the criteria. If they give you a rubric, again, use the rubrics. Look at how many points are coming from each section. Be very specific. And if you're unclear, because sometimes rubrics can be a little confusing, talk to your teacher, make a note on the rubric as you ask that question. Set up a Zoom meeting during their office hours or available time, and find out what it's going to take to be successful. Okay. So we're going to jump into kind of those 5 key areas that I flashed up earlier in line with our e-learning. This, I really would love for you guys to create. It's a little bit tedious, but this is going to save you so much hunting and pecking and searching for information in the future. It might take you a week or 2 to do this. You can get out a giant sheet of paper, kind of like this. I love giant paper for planning, for study guides, for processing information and writing things out, planning papers. But it's also great to just write a chart out and stick it up on your wall. You can use a poster, a whiteboard. You can do a Google Doc like you see here. So I want you to put your classes across the top, and then this kind of goes on. It's a really long Google Doc, so I have it on 3 screens, but get your teacher's information in here. Your email should auto-populate on your school email, I would assume, but just in case, make sure also that you know their free periods. When are they actually available? Is there a link for Zoom that they have for like a meeting room or Google Meet? You know, put that link right in the document so you can just click it at that time. Put the times and the hours and the days they're available so you know how to find your teachers if you need to ask questions, which I really want you to do. I know it can be uncomfortable. Homework assignments, like we talked about. Where do you find them? There could be 4 different places that you need to look. Make sure that you put all of those on here. You know, I would say, are they online? Are they printed? Are they on the board? Right now, pretty much everything is going to be online, but you will have some teachers who don't post a lot online. They just kind of tell you what you need to do when you're face-to-face on a Zoom or a Google Meet. So make sure that you know, ask teacher, check with friends, only announced in class, like know where to get that assignment from, because that's a lot of times the reason for a 0 in the grade book is that you just didn't even realize the assignment was in there. So make sure you know how to find out when it's due and what it is. And then also importantly, how do you turn it in? And what's their late work policy, just in case it didn't get done, which hopefully won't happen. What is the turn-in process? What website should you use? Is it Google and you have to just make sure you hit submit in a Google Classroom, or is it on a different platform? Do they want it emailed or uploaded into a Google Drive folder? Is there a platform that they're using? So it could be more than one. Do you have to put it on Google Classroom and on turnitin.com for a paper. So make sure you know all the different places that you're going to need to actually, how to actually turn in the work. And then the redo retake policy, a lot of classes and schools and teachers are very flexible on allowing you to redo or retake. And so make sure you know for each teacher what the exact policy is and be specific. What is the time frame? Okay, it might be that you have to, up until the test for that chapter, to retake the quizzes or to redo the work. So make sure you know when and what that looks like and what the process is. Usually there's some kind of a process that you have to go through, like write out what you did wrong, what you'll do differently next time, show some of the assignments, then they'll allow you to retake a quiz or test. So make sure you understand the exact process and the deadlines associated with that. So this chart's going to be really valuable if you get a few weeks into the semester or a couple months into the year and you realize that you need to answer one of these questions. You're going to be able to just look right there on your wall or pull it up on a bookmark and go, hey, cool, now I know where to find things. Top areas of focus in the class. I really want you in those first days of school to be paying attention to what the teacher says is making up your grade. They're going to give you something called a syllabus, typically, and that's usually going to be either loaded into their platform, Google Drive or Google Classroom or whatever it is, or emailed to you. And I want you to bookmark that. However it is that's easiest for you, so you can consistently refer back to it, but also take the information from that syllabus, and that's what you're going to use to populate a lot of this chart that we're talking about right now. Where's your grade coming from? So you can see here, teachers weight their grades differently. So understand what's going to make up the grade. Is it mostly projects, papers, quizzes, and understand how much of the grade it's making up. And then also for final exams, you can see under resource on this far right-hand side, class assignments and performance is 80%, and then the final is 20%. So that was what we talked about earlier about understanding how much of your final semester grade at the end of the semester in December or January is coming from the actual final exam itself. Some teachers are at 20%, some are at 10%, some are at 15%. It's usually in that range. The next one, to do well in this class. So you kind of now have met the teacher as you're filling in the chart. You know the content. You know what your strengths and weaknesses are or areas where you need to improve. What's it going to take for you? If it's a class on speaking, you're taking a speech class, or it's a writing class, and you struggle in those areas, we got to really start talking about, for you personally, what is it going to take to be successful? And that's going to be key. And you can add notes in as you learn lessons. I actually had a chart I did with a student a couple years ago, and we called it Lessons Learned, and it was a Google Doc, and we bookmarked it. And every time there was one of those like, oh, darn it, I screwed something up kind of moments, we talked about what the lesson was, what was the value that came out of it, what do you need to do next time, and we wrote it under Lessons Learned so that we could constantly be referring back to those during the year. So that's another idea of something that you can do. Absent policy, if you miss a class, what's their process for that? There's going to be a lot of really weird stuff going on this year. So make sure you know if you miss class, how do you make it up? How do you turn in the work? What's the policy? And then resources for help. Make sure you know what's available. Ask your teacher what you can actually do if you need to get help. And then materials, what does the class require? What either website they're using, but also is there a calculator you need? Is there a journal you need to write every week? You can put that in there. I highly recommend that you find 2 students in the class that you can contact with questions, or if you miss class to find out what's going on, or if you just don't understand an assignment. So get their cell number, their SNAP code, whatever it is you guys do, to communicate and just have that checkpoint person. I know it's a little uncomfortable, it's going to be weird because it's virtual, but I want you communicating with other kids and having that person to bounce it off of. You could even maybe ask the teacher to send a note to the class saying, hey, if anyone's interested in sharing information, or I'm not sure how you're going to be able to see who's in that class, but I'm sure on Zoom you could even type into the chat and be like, anybody want to exchange numbers so we can talk about getting help on assignments or whatnot. And then if you have accommodations, make sure you know what they are, how you're going to use them for the class, and how you should be using them. And then other websites or logins. So make a list of all the websites your teacher is using. They're going to be using a lot of different platforms, and that can get pretty tricky. So I'm probably, this is going to be the first webinar, I'm going to run a few minutes over. So I'm just going to warn you guys, hopefully you're finding value in this, but I've got really great stuff coming. I'll go through it pretty quick, but and if you have additional questions or you want to see some of these pieces, we do have other workshops and I'm around, so email me. We want you to make sure that step 2, this is your visual processes and plans. Every student needs to have a daily routine, and it can be as specific as this one that you see here. Kind of, here's everything I have to do. Don't forget to check in online for your attendance. This happened a ton to students. They're gonna start caring about this. Your grades are gonna count this year. So we really have to stay on top of every benchmark item you need to be doing daily to be successful. What do you need to set up and open? Make sure your station is set up. Make sure you're checking your email. I cannot talk enough about this because of the environment we're in. Email is the primary way teachers are going to communicate, and probably Google Classroom messages. So make sure that you are checking the email and that you have a system for taking the to-do or action items or the assignments given and putting them into your planner or on your to-do list so you do not lose sight of anything that they're announcing, any changes to due dates, anything at all. That email is going to be so important. You should be checking it multiple times a day. And then grades, making sure that you're checking those grades regularly and following up when you have questions. And then each class, I want you to kind of go through, and you can see here, and really be specific as to what you need to open up and check and do each day to be successful. You can kind of see here by like at the end of the day, here's what I need to do. Check my email again. That's not on there, but it should be. Double check my planner. Did I turn my work in? You can put an evening checklist in. The next one is a weekend. I want you every weekend to be thinking, okay, let me do a little reset. Let me organize my papers if you have any printed. Let me look back at the week, check my grades. What do I need to do differently in the upcoming week? Do I need to update my plans or my if-thens? What's coming up ahead? Do I have things due the following week? What can I put in my planner and kind of break down and work backwards on? So some kids like to do it on that list like we saw. Some kids like to do this kind of class by class or just general spreadsheet where they can put check boxes in and kind of habit track and see if they did all of those tasks. We're going to talk in future workshops more about studying, but this is kind of that process piece. I want you to have a process and a plan for how to study. And this is just one of the tools that we use that we're going to go into more detail on in future when we talk about other ways to study and making an exact study plan for every single class, because they're all going to look very different depending on the content and the material and the format of the test or the quiz. Planner, this is a huge piece. So I know I'm recognizing some names here on the call, so I know that some of you have seen this before, but I really want you to find a planner. We have one like this, we have one with lines. There's awesome ones you can customize online that you can find, but I really want you to pay attention to the features that are most important to keep you organized, which are Monday through Friday, the week goes left to right, morning till night, kind of top down. We like to put our classes in the order we have them because it just makes more sense. In the evenings, if you have other outside activities or lessons or sports that you're still doing, block in those times for your commitments, because you're going to want to be able to see the big picture. If you have a test, say on Friday, you want to be able to look down to the night before. If you have 2 tests Friday and the night before you're pretty darn busy, you're not going to be able to do your regular homework and really adequately prepare for those tests on Friday if you're really busy Thursday night with plans with family or with sports or whatnot. So you're going to want to be able to then move backwards to the previous days. And I want you guys to write down exactly what it is you need to do to prepare for a test or to complete an assignment or project or paper. I don't want you just putting work on paper, work on paper, work on paper, study, study, study. When you see that word study, and if we were in a big group setting, we always ask like, oh, what's your first response? And all the kids are like, study, I'll just do it later. That's kind of what we think. And then we avoid it and we think, oh, I'll just look it over. And then it doesn't get done to the extent that it needs to in order for you to be successful. So I want you to write down exact from that class and study plan, exact steps you can take when you're studying, when you're doing a paper, when you're working on a big project. And I want those little steps written in the planner on the days before you get up to it. That way it's easier to just grab those tasks and get them done. So that's kind of the general format that we like and the approach that we use when we're talking about a good solid planner and managing all of your assignments and little to-dos. And then a lot of kids like to do this. I always show this picture as kind of a whiteboard-ish. We use a poster frame that we then put the paper behind it for kind of what the set schedule looks like. They have their daily and weekly lists on here, a little to-do list. And then each week you can take a dry erase marker on the front and kind of just update. This is more big picture. This is not for the planner like we talked about with all of the specific assignments and homework and studying. This is more big picture, what your week looks like and what you need to get done. So a lot of kids like that. Again, it's visual, it's up on the wall, it's in your face. That's going to be the most helpful when it comes to managing the school year and doing well. Here's an example of one of those big long charts that I showed you. An example of a student who kind of used a monthly calendar. She has all her teacher emails up on the right, and then she actually blew up and laminated the planner pages and then is using a dry erase marker each week to kind of fill in a couple weeks at a time of the work that she needs to get done. So step 4 is self-regulation. It's 11:30. I'm going to keep going for probably, I'm hoping about 4 or 5 minutes. Self-regulation is going to be key. It's that motivation, procrastination. I want you guys thinking right now. You can brainstorm with your parents. If you're a parent, you can brainstorm with your student. What historically has gotten in your way and what might get in your way in the future. Okay, so do you procrastinate? Do you have trouble motivating? Do you miss assignments? Can you not focus at times? What is it that you're going to need to problem solve around? So we want you to start recognizing when those situations occur, kind of stop and say, oh gosh, it's occurring again. What do I do? Then I want you to have 2 pieces, and you can see up here, that's the action item. So if you are procrastinating, here are action steps I can take, X, Y, Z, and then remember. So do is action steps, Remember is that reminder. If I blow this off, my parents will be really angry. That's typically what students write. But any kind of self-talk, just do it now. You'll feel terrible later. You'll beat yourself up. Don't avoid it. You can do this. Whatever little self-talk reminders you need under remember, that sometimes just prompts you to then go back up and take those action steps. But the most important thing in self-regulating here is that you start thinking about how to manage when things get in your way and action steps that you can take to get yourself right back on track. And I've got another couple student examples here that students have actually created. This was a high school student. I think she was heading away to college and was kind of making her plans for all the different situations that could occur. And then frustration or needing to do well on a test, you can write out processes for those pieces as well. So we call those if-thens. All right, my last section is reaching out. So we talked about reaching out to students and other kids in the class. Please don't hesitate to do it. There will be other kids who are thankful. You don't have to be their best friend. Just get the information. And that way, when you're unsure about where to find something or how to do something, you can check in. The other thing I strongly recommend is that you have an initial meeting with your teacher. It's probably over Zoom or Meet or whatnot, but set up a time to sit down and just say, hey, I'd really like to do well in your class. And then there's a list of questions here that you can ask. How do I best prepare for your tests and quizzes? What are the best ways to really just do well in the class overall? Where can I get help and how do I do that? Or do you have resources that are additional that I can use? Write those notes down and put them on your big chart, because you're going to then know ways that you can be successful. And a lot of times when you do these one-on-one meetings, teachers, you would be surprised or not maybe how much information they're willing to give away that they maybe just forgot to tell the class. Like, oh yeah, don't forget guys, I actually take most of my test questions from the book and not the PowerPoints, or vice versa. Really, you should focus on the PowerPoints for those tests. The book is nice, you should read it, but I get all my questions from my PowerPoint slides or Google Slides. So if you go in one-on-one and you just take a few minutes to just ask your teacher these questions, you'd be surprised at what great information that you might get that's going to help you to be more successful. So big takeaways today are: make everything visual. The more you can print out, post up, write up in your face, the less likely you're going to be to avoid and not use it. Make it specific and concrete and actionable. You want little steps you can take that are very specific, not very broad. Oh, I should study, I should do this. Customized, again, we talked a lot about making these your own given your situation with your teachers and your classes this year. Accountability, we talked a little bit about. I'm going to talk more for a sec here. All of us need accountability. We need someone to help keep us on task at times, or to be that checkpoint. So if you're a parent, talk to your student about how that's going to look. If you're a student, talk to your parents about what you need. Hey, mom and dad, I need you to check my checklist at the end of each day or each week. And if not, take away my phone, take away my PS4. Like, usually that's what kids say. It's not even me saying that. The kids at the end of the day are like, you know what, I'll be more motivated if you just take my phone away. I don't start with that, but usually we realize when we have something we want at the end, we're going to be more likely to get things done. It's okay to need accountability. We as adults still need accountability. So use someone. It might be an accountability partner in the class. Usually for you guys in high school, it's your parents for this period in time. Talk about what that's going to look like and what that needs to be. These pieces and tools do not need to be fancy. They can be typed out, they can be on Google Docs, or you can just scribble them out and put them on whiteboards on the wall. Just make sure they're functional and they're hitting on all these points that we're talking about for you being successful. We just mentioned the accountability piece. So here's an example of a student's planner and kind of what that looked like at the end of the week. See how they put their tests ahead of time, and then they kind of work backwards to say they wanted to review the review packet and make a study guide and things. This is another kind of a how-to. Don't hesitate to write how-tos and to create this as you go. So not only how to study, but also how to do well in the class. And you can customize one of those for each of your classes. Really quick upcoming workshops. We've got a free one for middle schoolers next week. And then we go into our 1.5-hour workshops where you're going to get a lot of these Google Doc copies and PDF materials that you can write on for yourself. And those are at the dates below. You guys can check those out. So High School 101, the 1.5-hour version where we're going to start creating these pieces is next Sunday at noon. 6-week coaching groups. If you feel that it would be better to have someone other than your parent checking in with you, we're going to do twice weekly coaching groups, discussion groups. So you hop on and we just start talking about, how are you learning how to learn when maybe sometimes it's not being taught in a way that works for you? How are you managing? Are you keeping up on your assignments? Are you self-regulated and motivated? Not that you have to be excited all the time, but are you getting your stuff done? What are the grades looking like? How are you dealing with challenges? Are you communicating with your teachers? Sometimes it really helps just to have someone to kind of jump on and talk to about that. And we'll share all kinds of tips, strategies, routines, examples, everything, and will help you to actually problem solve and craft those emails. And, the kids in the group can also brainstorm ideas for dealing with something or study skills. So we're going to get into that. And twice weekly, we'll be on for 30 minutes. And sometimes it's just going to be time where we're kind of chatting and also working on creating those charts and updating our planner and checking our grades all while we're on live. So if you feel like you want kind of that guided accountability, we're going to be here for that. It's pretty cool. We also have kind of a check-in program. So parents of young or high school kids of any age, this is not an in-person face-to-face. This is a digital accountability where they either make a habit tracker like we showed you or a to-do list, and then they fill out a Google form. So students, you'd fill out a Google form every day. And sometimes if you forget, you can do the next day for 2 days, fine. But generally every day. And at the end of the week, we type up that report. It does go to your parents because we are talking about accountability. This way your parents can stay off your back during the week. They don't have to hover or check the grades. We want you doing all that for yourself. And at the end of the week, the two of you get together and we say, look how many times they fill out the report. This is kind of what they're sharing with us is happening. And then you as a family discuss, does something need to change? What are the solutions to these challenges? What do I need to do differently to improve a grade or on a task? So it's kind of cool because it's all going to be digital and it's just up to you to keep you on track. So that's our accountability check-in program. We have awesome videos on YouTube that share different tips and strategies. I have a bunch of blogs on my website. Lots of times we put free downloads of PDFs in there. If anyone has questions, throw them in the chat. I know I went over. Thanks for hanging with me. Hopefully it's all very valuable, and we kind of just got to skim the surface today, but in the workshops and groups, we're going to go into great detail. And I think sometimes students just need a lot of support and guidance in creating these pieces for themselves. So I am not seeing any messages in the chat. You can reach me at our website, solutionsforstudentsuccess.com. My email address is lisa@efscoach.com, executive function skills, so efscoach.com. I'm pretty accessible. Other than that, good luck at the start of the year. Let me know if you have questions, and hopefully we will see you guys soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.